Hi, and welcome to video number 2 of our Cleopatra. This part deals with where she lived and how she grew up as a child. Of course, Cleopatra grew up in Alexandria, where the palaces were located. Alexandria itself, as I mentioned before, was built by Alexander the Great, and was actually rather a ghetto of Greek folks who controlled Egypt. They had very little to do with the Egyptians, other than the fact that the Egyptians worked inside the palace gates, so to speak, and were the manual labor for the Greeks. The Greeks controlled the entire area and did all the trade, the finance, and everything else. And of course, Cleopatra, as I mentioned before, herself was of Greek DNA. Alexandria, the city, was divided into a couple of areas. One was the Eastern Gate, where the a large number of Jewish people lived who had run away from problems in their own area, and the Egyptians had a small corner of it, and the rest of it was Greek people, including the library, which housed supposedly 700,000 documents, which were unfortunately lost in the fire when Caesar was attacked by the local crowds. They didn't want any Romans around. Anyway, Cleopatra grew up there, we can surmise, and probably spent from the age 1 to 16 or 1 to 18 learning languages. She spoke about 7 or 8 languages, and that's one thing that the Romans did admire, her fluency in Latin. Of course, Egyptian. She was the only autonomy to bother learning Egyptian in 300 years that they controlled the area. So it shows that her heart was in the right place when it comes to the Egyptian people. She was a fine, intelligent woman, and also she shared some things that Caesar also had, and you call that thinking out of the box. She played pranks and games and different things that really showed before the age of 18 that this girl was quite different. Now, she learned some hard lessons before her father died. Going back a bit, before her father died, he went to Rome and borrowed a tremendous amount of money, millions of dollars, so to speak. And he didn't bring the money back. He used it to pay off local high-ranking Roman generals and senators in order to protect his seat. The Ptolemies, or the Greeks in Egypt, already understood that the Romans were eating up the area and starting to control the entire Mediterranean basin, and the writing was on the wall as far as how long they were going to last. So they were trying to sort of buy their way into it, avoid it in all costs. So he borrowed this large amount of money and gave it to the Roman generals, including Pompey, who became the guarantor for his throne. But when he got back to Egypt, he found that his daughter, Bernice, the older sister of Cleopatra, had taken over the neighborhood. So he had her hung, he had her strung up, and that was the end of her. So then he died a miserable death. So Cleopatra, before the 18, got some hard lessons in, how to dispose of your own siblings. It's okay to kill family members. About the money that was owed to the Romans, and they'd be coming looking for that, and of course other things that she picked up along the way. Now, by the time she was 18, it was required that she marry her brother, as I mentioned before, which she did. However, she didn't take too kindly to that. He was 10, she was 18, and she sort of left him out of things, like she had new coins stamped with her face on it, but not his. She issued decrees without him being present, and this was the beginning of her end in Egypt for a while anyway, because the brother's advisors had the army behind them. Achilles was not the Achilles of Greece, but a different Achilles, was in charge of the army, and he was already conspiring how to get rid of her. Now these are details that are in my film, but they're also supposedly historically correct. So at 18 she becomes a queen, he becomes a king, and then the fun starts. So in the next video I'll be talking about that. Okay, thank you for joining me. All right, and don't forget to press the donate button. All right, thank you, bye-bye.